How often do you lie to yourself? Or even worse, how often do you believe the lies that you tell yourself? Guess what? Those lies are at least 90% of the reason that you haven't achieved your goals yet. Oh my goodness. Hey y'all, what's up? What's up? It's Robert Kennedy III, RK3. That's me, and welcome to the Monday Mindset Movement. So glad that you all are in the building. So glad that you're here today with me on Instagram. Yes, M Lewis 9541. So glad that you're here. Tamika S. Graham. So glad that you're here. Johnson. So glad that you're here. Jessica. So glad that you're here. Oh yeah, come on. Do me a favor, y'all. Where's my stuff? Okay, yep, I forgot to get my stuff. But I have to hold my stuff up. Hold on 1 second. Make sure that you are sharing this out. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and check out Robert Kennedy 3 on YouTube so that you can get access to this stuff. All right. And yeah, when you subscribe, make sure you hit that notification bell so that you know when we're going live. All right. Now, TL Speaks. So good to see you this morning on YouTube. Yeah. So listen, y'all, we're going to talk this morning about those lies that we tell ourselves. And we're going to talk about how to exit or evict those lies and think bigger. Let's do it. Let's do it. Yes, again. Do me a favor. Come on. If you believe that we're bringing value here on the Monday Mindset Movement, share the show with a friend. Go get somebody. Tell somebody else, come on in here and get some goodness. Yeah. How are y'all doing? How y'all doing? Do me a favor. Type in the chat. Let me know how you're doing. I want to shout you out and give you the goodness. So let me pop up a couple of the chats this morning that are happening. Good morning. Good to see you. Yes, good to see you this morning. Yeah, good to see you this morning, TL. All right. So let's jump on in this morning. We want to talk about thinking bigger. All right. Beyond Limits is the title of this episode. And I love this title because it really helps me it's a reminder to me of my own thought process and what I need to be doing with my own thought process. I don't know if you are in the space where you look at your daily life and you think about, okay, why am I here? And is there anything that you can do to move further? So I want to share with you a story about myself. One of the times where I came to a realization, and it was, I was flying. I was on an airplane flying, and you know how the flight attendants come through the cabin at some point, right? And what they do is they ask you a question. They ask you, cookies or pretzels? Or, they ask you what kind of drink you want, but they ask you cookies or pretzels. And typically my answer was cookies or pretzels, whichever one I was in the mood for, or if I was watching my sugar or whatever, I decided what I wanted to take that day. But one day, for some reason, I think I had heard this from somebody before. One day they asked me the question, cookies or pretzels? And one day I said, both. And you know what they responded? They said, okay. They said yes. Now, up until that particular moment, I had not thought it possible that I could get both. Up until that moment, I had made the assumption that I only had one choice. Right? Up until that moment, they asked me that binary question, cookies or pretzels, and I made the assumption that I could only have one of them. Now, in that moment, as I was listening, or as I received that response, in that moment, I asked myself a question. I said, "Oh my gosh, all this time I've been thinking about this a certain way. What other spaces or what other areas in my life have I been thinking about the choices I could make a certain way? What other places in my life have I been thinking that I was limited in what I could receive? When in the reality, the truth is that I could have had more. I could have thought bigger. I could have said both, or I could have said both and asked for something on top of that. How many spaces in my life? I want you to ask yourself the same question. What are some of the choices that you thought you had to make that were in reality less than the options you actually had? Yeah. I'm not blaming you. I'm not pointing the finger at just you, because I think all of us walk through times and we walk through spaces where we don't realize what we're really worth. We don't realize what we actually have access to. We don't realize that our mindset or our thinking is actually smaller than the possibility that we have access to. I'll share with you something else. I was driving with my son one day, and we were driving in an office park, or we're driving by an office park, and we were looking at some big buildings in a downtown area. And as we drove by one of the buildings, my son asked me a question. He said, "Daddy, who owns that building?" And at that moment, again, it occurred to me that I'd only thought about the different offices and the businesses that were in the building, but I hadn't thought about who owned the building. And even further than that, I hadn't thought about the possibility that I could own a building. I realized that I'd limited ownership to houses, small buildings, small assets. I've been driving around. I've been looking at these buildings. I've been looking at all of these different ideas. I've been looking at these monstrosities. I've been looking at this real estate, and I'd taken it for granted. I didn't even think about ownership of it. I didn't think it was possible because my mindset didn't go there. And so when my son asked the question, "Who owns this building?" it occurred to me that, my Lord, I wasn't thinking in that way. And again, for each of us, how do you think? Do you think from an ownership perspective? Do you think that you have the possibility or the potential to do certain things? And I didn't think that way because I didn't personally know anybody that did those things. I didn't know anybody that owned a big office building at the time. I didn't know anyone who talked about owning big office buildings at the time. And so here's what I want you to get from this. Here's what I want you to understand from this. Sometimes your environment, the people that you hang around, how you grow up, has direct proportion to the size of your thinking. I want you to get that. The size of your dreams may be affected by the size of your belief. The things that you believe, your core values, your inherent beliefs, the things that are imprinted and implanted in you consciously and unconsciously, The size of your dreams are affected by those beliefs. I'm pausing because I want that to sink in for a moment. I want that to sink in for a moment. Ask yourself as you go through this week, where am I thinking smaller, or where am I taking life for granted? Where am I making assumptions in life about what I'm worth, what I have access to, what I can achieve, what I can accomplish? Where in my life am I thinking smaller than I need to be or than I can? And I can take this several ways. I can take this to a spiritual or a faith perspective. As someone who's from a faith perspective, if I believe that I serve a God, a divine being, or that I was created by a divine being that had the ability to create an entire universe, why is it that I can only accomplish certain things? How dare I believe I can only accomplish certain small things? Right? And even if I take it outside of that, if I look at all of the ideas around me, if I look at everything that has been invented, right? People came from one continent to another and somebody had to build a boat. At some point, somebody had to think big enough that they were like, oh, okay, I can build this thing. I can build this object that is going to float on water and take us across an ocean that I'm not even certain of the size of. Somebody had to think. If you think about the Wright brothers, yeah, that's right, Marv Ricky, kingdom mindset. If you think about the Wright brothers, Orville and Wilbur Wright, back in the day, people were asking or looking at them like they were nuts because they were talking about, oh, yeah, we can get this machine to fly or to be in the air. And people didn't believe it. Here's why people didn't believe it. Because most people at the time, they were riding in horse and buggy. If I throw a ball or if I throw a rock up in the air, it's going to fall. If I jump off of something, if I jump off a seesaw, if I jump off, I'm going to fall. So they hadn't at that time, except for birds, seen anything that was able to sustain flight. And so when Orville and Wilbur were like, okay, yep, we are going to build something that sustains flight, people looked at them like they were nuts. They were crazy. And they could have done what a lot of us do, right? Everybody else around us says, no, you can't do that because it's never been done. You can't do that because when I do this, the opposite happens. You can't do. They could have taken the beliefs of others, adopted it for themselves and said, yeah, you're right, and walked away. But they didn't. They decided that they were going to do a couple of things. They decided that, number one, they were going to believe in the belief of each other. And then number two, they decided that they were going to separate themselves from those and get around those who believed in the magnitude of their belief. And so if you think about yourself in your life, the magnitude of your belief is affected by your environment. And the size of your dreams is affected by the magnitude of your belief. So what do you believe? Who are you hanging around? Where are you? So here's what I want to do this morning. I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you a little bit. I want to challenge you to think a little bit bigger. And this is not just you. This is me. I want to challenge you to do it. And I don't want to just say, hey, think bigger, and then we end the show and walk away. I want you to take on some active actions. I want you to take on some stuff today. So, for example, I want you to challenge your limiting beliefs. I want you to challenge everything that you think. I want you to challenge everything that you think cannot be done today. I want you to think about anything that you have told yourself is not possible. It's not possible for me to get out of debt. It's not possible for me to uh, be a public speaker. I'm not cut out for public speaking. I know some people who have had one awkward experience. And because they've had that awkward experience, they've cut out that activity or that action. So if you've been telling yourself, I'm not cut out for public speaking, here's what I want you to do. I want you to write that belief down. I want you to write that belief down. Because if you look at me and you look at what I do and you look at me being on stages and speaking in front of people, I had the moment when I was a kid, when I was young, where I was on stage and it was awkward and I hated it and I was nervous. I had the moment where people told me that you talk too much or you ask too many questions, and so I shut down and I stopped doing that. I've had to navigate that. So I want you to write down the belief that you have, the negative belief, and then I want you to list moments where you stepped past that belief. Because here's what happens. Quite often we do something or we achieve something, but we drive past it because we didn't attach it to the moment where we achieved that negative belief. So you might have told yourself, okay, I don't like public speaking, but maybe you led a team meeting once. Or maybe there was a discussion happening and you shared a really good idea. So now what I want you to do is I want you to write down the negative belief. I want you to then write down a list of the moments where you surpassed that negative belief in any way. And then I want you to replace that negative belief with a new thought. So if your negative belief was, I am not cut out for public speaking, and you list all the times that you have spoken in front of others in a great way, then I want you to replace that old thought. I have a compelling voice that deserves to be heard. And I want you to reprogram your mindset to embrace your true potential. Because here's what happens. We try to use willpower to get rid of stuff. If there's something negative that we think, if there's something negative in our life, we try to use willpower and say, I'm not going to think that way. I'm not going to think that way. I'm not going to think that way. Here's what happens. It's not about not doing something. It's about replacing it. You see, if you could consider your life a shelf, and that shelf is full of items, and all those items represent the belief systems that you have in your life. If you take one out, you got to put another one back in, right? Because here's what happens. If you take one out and there's space there, that's going to be filled with something else, whether you intend it to or not. So you want to practice replacement. If you are trying to replace or you're trying to remove an old belief, you've got to replace it with a new one. So if you're saying to yourself, if you've said to yourself, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at public speaking, I'm not cut out for public speaking, I want you to replace that instead with something new. And that new thing is, I've got a compelling voice that deserves to be heard. All right, so I want you to challenge your limiting beliefs. The second thing that I want you to do today is I want you to embrace new perspectives. I want you to embrace new perspectives. Here's what I mean. If you typically stick to some familiar routines, I want you to try stepping out of those routines today. I want you to do something different, something new. I want you to step out of your comfort zone. For example, the other day, my wife told me that one of her goals over the next few years is to become fluent in another language. Learning another language is a new way. It's a way to step out of your comfort zone. It's a way to expand your mindset. It's a way to show yourself that you can do something different, something bigger, right? So if you have never attended a workshop in a subject that you've never explored, it may be time to do that. That helps you to step out of your familiar. Maybe if you've never taken a tech innovation seminar or a creative art class, or maybe if you've never done pottery, whatever it is, do something different. Expose your mind to something that you've never explored. You see, because when you expose yourself to fresh ideas and diverse viewpoints, you invite creativity and new ways of thinking. You are literally changing your biological makeup. Your brain is literally making new pathways, right? And when you invite those new ways of thinking, that completely transforms how you approach your challenges. You see, right now, the way that we live, when we embrace or when we have a challenge, typically we try to solve the challenges in the way that we've been used to doing it. We try to solve those challenges in the way that we know how. And we do that because we have created these grooves or these pathways in our brains that our minds naturally fall into. It's the same thing in relationships, right? As I talk to my kids about relationships, what we talk to them about is, listen, people will naturally revert to their baseline when stress hits. Right? When things are stressful, you're dating somebody and they're nice and they're cuddly and they're doing these things. When the stress hits, they're going to naturally revert to their baseline, what they grew up with, what they're used to, what their belief system is. They're going to naturally revert to that unless they have intentionally and actively been working to expand that. Right? And if I go back to what we said earlier, the size of your dreams is affected by the size of your belief. So I want you to embrace new perspectives and move out of your comfort zone and move into or expose your mind to unfamiliar routines, because what that does is, again, it transforms and it grows how your mind approaches ideas. Authentic Gary Graham, good to see you this morning. C. Marie, good to see you this morning. Judith Schneidman, good to see you this morning. Marv Ricky, hey, glad that you're here. Don Kirk, Danny Lewis, so glad that you're here, my friend. All right, let's move to our third one. So our first two things or ideas that we want you to take on this morning is, number one, challenging your limiting beliefs. Number two, embracing new perspectives. The third thought process, or the third thing that we want you to do, is we want you to visualize spaced out success. I want you to visualize spaced out. And when I say spaced out success, I'm not just talking about I see myself doing something. I want you to see yourself doing something wild. If you could think about your dream career or your dream personal achievement, I want you to visualize yourself doing it. For me, I'll share one with you. Let me be vulnerable for a second. I have this dream of myself standing on a stage in an auditorium or in a stadium with more than 50,000 people there speaking. I visualize that. It hasn't happened yet. I don't know when it will happen, but I visualize it. That's something that I visualize. I see it. So I want you to think about something large. I want you to think about something big. I want you to think about something bigger than you've ever thought before. And I want you to visualize that. And I want you to spend some time each day doing that. They say if you spend 10 minutes each day with your eyes closed, picturing every detail, from the excitement of that moment to the admiration of those around you, you are more likely to achieve that thing. For example, if you're launching a business and launching your business is a goal, I want you to think about, imagine the day where the doors open and I want you to visualize shaking your hands with your first major client, having your team hold up their glasses, everybody cheering and celebrating this milestone. This is what we call mental rehearsal. This is vivid mental rehearsal. And this trains your brain to see success as not just possible, but inevitable. And when you get there, your mind is going to be like, yeah, we've been here before. We've been here before. We're getting close to time today. We're getting close to that. I hope that we've been walking through this and you've been like, okay, yeah, I can think bigger. I can think bigger. If you could measure the size of your dreams on a scale of 1 to 10 right now, how big are your current dreams? Are you at a 4? Are you at a 5? Where are you? And once you have that number, what would it take to increase it? What would it take to increase it? As we land the plane, as we end today, I want to leave with you this quote. I don't know where it came from, but it says, your environment is the fertile soil where your beliefs take root. Nourish it with possibilities and positivity, and your potential will bloom beyond limits. I'll say that once again. Your environment is the fertile soil where your beliefs take root. Nourish it with positivity, with possibility, and your potential will bloom beyond limits. I want y'all to live limitless. I want you to move beyond your norm, your current comfort zones. I want you to think larger. I invite you to think larger. I encourage you to think larger. I'm inviting myself to do that. Speaking of invitation, I want to invite you all to join me in the Story, Speaking, and Sales Growth community. And I go to learnwithrk3.com/3S community. Yeah, see Marie B. I love it. I love it. All right. I love it. Somebody says they're on 20 right now. I love it. Join me in the Story, Speaking, and Sales Growth community. Go to learnwithrk3.com/3S community. And let's grow together, y'all. Let's grow together. I love it. All right. Let's do this thing this week. Take some time. Think bigger. Don't think small. Think bigger. You're worth it. And the world is waiting for you. See you next Monday, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Monday Mindset Movement. Let's do it.